The Art of Leadership Network.
Hey leaders, welcome to the Lead Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Jenni Catron, CEO of the Foresight Group. We're a company dedicated to helping leaders develop thriving teams. Each week, I'll be your guide as we explore practical strategies to equip you with the tools you need to lead with clarity, confidence, and build unstoppable momentum in your organization. Now, my mission is to be your trusted coach. I've been where you are, I've done what you've done, and I want to empower you to master the art of self-leadership so you'll learn to lead yourself well so you can lead others better. Each week, we take a deep dive on a leadership or a culture topic. You'll hear stories from some amazing guests and leaders like you who are committed to leading well. So let's dive in and keep learning on this leadership journey together. Friends, can you believe we've reached the final episode of the Summer of Leadership series? I don't want to even talk about the idea that summer might be coming closer to an end, but the series is coming to an end, and I hope it has been incredibly helpful for you to think about the skills that you and your team need to lead well, because how leaders lead directly impacts culture. And I really do hope you've seen just how connected these leadership skills are to shaping a thriving culture. These aren't just the check the box skills. They're really the building blocks for creating the kind of environment where people grow, teams thrive, and culture really does become unstoppable. Like, I truly believe it's possible, and I hope you are starting to see a glimmer of it as well. So to wrap it up, we're talking about something that isn't technically a skill, at least in my opinion, but it's one of the most powerful forces in great leadership and in great cultures. It's the concept of ownership. Now, let me start this with a story. I want to tell you about a leader that I had the privilege of working with for a number of years. Her name was Jamie, and she was frustrated with the culture of her organization. We've all been there, right? And in particular, 2020, COVID caused their team to all move to remote work, like so many of the rest of us did. And while working remotely was possible for the type of work that their nonprofit did, she noticed a steep decline in engagement, including her own engagement, right? Like, she noticed she was becoming disengaged, her coworkers were becoming disengaged. And additionally, the organization was reeling from significant turnover, right? Like, it was just kind of a revolving door. So Jamie was discouraged, of course, and really felt a bit hopeless. Like, she was pretty discouraged and really just didn't see hope or possibility for the future for her organization. And she raised the concerns to leadership quite a few times, and they acknowledged the concerns. Like, they weren't dismissive, but they had just a ton of other issues that they were navigating, right? So senior leadership is just dealing with a couple of other fires. And while they weren't saying that her concerns weren't warranted, they just weren't giving time to address culture directly. So finally, after even considering leaving the organization herself, which she had some pretty serious thoughts about doing, Jamie decided to take responsibility for what she could. As the leader of a small department, she decided to focus on what she could control, which was the experience of her team. And so she read some of my early writings that eventually became my book, Culture Matters. And she began implementing a culture plan with her team. And she did the things we talk about a lot. She focused on providing clarity by addressing their concerns and questions, right? If y'all remember, we were all had a lot of questions and a lot of concerns, especially in those couple years after COVID. She clarified job responsibilities because things had shifted a lot. So she really tried to clarify for her team who was doing what. She defined values for how their team would work together, now in alignment with their corporate values, but she just got a little more specific about how their team would actually work. And she built trust by inviting feedback and creating more opportunities for her team to connect, even though they had to stay virtual for quite some time. She got really intentional about just opportunities for her team to connect with one another. And you guys, here's what happened. Within a year, Jamie's team was an outlier, but in a good way. Where the rest of the organization was still struggling with high turnover and disengaged team members, Jamie's team was incredibly strong and highly productive. Like, they were getting stuff done. They enjoyed being together. And it didn't take long for the leadership team to become curious about why Jamie's team was performing so much better. And as you can imagine, it opened doors for the culture work across the entire organization. And friends, here's what Jamie did. She took ownership. She took ownership of what she could control. In great cultures, every leader at every level has such a deep commitment to their work, to their team, and to the mission of the organization that they behave like owners. They show up and engage as if they were the founder, as if it was their thing. They care deeply about the work, and they demonstrate their commitment through the behaviors we've talked about so far. So this one, the ownership skill, so to speak, is really a culmination of a lot of the other things we've talked about. It's that I care so deeply. I'm committed to this work, to our team, to what we're doing, that I am taking ownership for what I can control. And that's exactly what Jamie did. Ownership isn't a skill you master. It's really an attitude you adopt. Leaders who take ownership act like they own the outcome. They don't pass the buck or wait for someone else to solve the problem. They just take initiative. And that's what Jamie did. For a season, she was trying to figure out how to get somebody else to take responsibility for the concerns she saw. And then she decided, I'm going to take initiative for what I can, which was her direct team. When you take ownership, it shows. Your work reflects it. Your presence reflects it. And your team starts to reflect it as well. Culture grows strong when leaders act like owners. They take responsibility as if they were the founder or the CEO. So let's talk a little bit of what ownership looks like. Leaders who take ownership are deeply committed to the mission, the values, and the people of the organization, right? They really embrace it. They're not just clocking in or clocking out. They show up engaged. So they lead with excellence, right? They want the best for their organization. They want the best for their team. They hold themselves to a high standard, not because someone's watching, but because they care, right? They're not waiting for somebody to notice or see it. They're doing it because they care and they believe in what they're doing. It's not about pride or wanting to be noticed. It's about alignment. Ownership means you're invested in the good of the whole organization. There's a legendary story that I think is more fictional than fact, but it's still a fun one. That there's the story that during a visit to NASA in the 1960s, President John F. Kennedy encountered a janitor and asked him what he did. And supposedly the janitor, rather than simply saying he cleaned floors, replied, "My job, sir, is to put a man on the moon." Now, again, there's difficulty. Like, if you research the story, it's told numerous times, but nobody can really directly document it. But I love the premise of it, that it was like every leader at every level understands they're connected to the mission. Every leader at every level understands that they're connected to the mission, that the mission, in NASA's case, to put a man on the moon, this is back in the 60s when we were aiming for that effort, that every person and every seat in the organization knew that their role was mission critical to helping make the mission happen. That's what great leaders do. That's what culture building leaders do, is they take ownership. They know that their role is connected to the mission. So how does ownership develop? You don't wake up one day and feel ownership. It maybe if there's a mission you're super passionate about and it's a new role that you're jumping into, you might feel some immediate ownership. But by and large, it develops over time as you grow in leadership, right? As you grow, and you can attest to this because you've probably been there, that as you've grown in your leadership and you've grown in your self-leadership, your self-awareness, you recognize the responsibility of leadership. You've developed that what I call the philosophy of leadership. You know why you lead. It's not for title or prestige. It's really because you want to love and serve others well, right? As you grow in leadership, you also recognize how critical ownership mentality is. So the more you lead with clarity, with empathy, with responsibility, the more connected you become to your team and your organization. This is how you develop ownership, is you're leading with clarity, with empathy, with responsibility, and your commitment and ownership level goes up. Leadership development and ownership go hand in hand because when you pour into your leaders, you help them care more deeply and lead more boldly, and consequently, they take more ownership as well. So let's talk about some practical ways to build ownership. Schedule some intentional check-ins to assess where each team member feels most connected and where they might feel disconnected, right? So oftentimes what happens is if a team member feels disconnected, they're feeling some measure of they don't have agency, they don't have some control. And so when we don't feel like we can influence something, we disengage, we disconnect. And so you want to be looking for where do they maybe feel like they're not empowered, because that might be inhibiting them from taking ownership. So just having some good conversations and getting a sense of where might your team feel a bit disconnected will give you some ideas of where to coach them and help empower them. You can also use leadership assessments or growth plans to identify development gaps. So again, maybe their disconnection or their lack of ownership is not a lack of interest, but there might be a skill that they don't feel like they have that they really could use some coaching to help support them. So look for those opportunities for development, and that will likely increase ownership. You can also facilitate team conversations around what ownership looks like in your culture. So get clear about what you expect from your team. Oftentimes team members come in with past experience and they might have come from an organization where they were not encouraged to take ownership. Maybe it was a high control culture, and so where people were expected to just follow orders and not take a lot of ownership. So you might need to clarify what that looks like for your organization. And then finally, create some leadership development opportunities that help team members connect the values to daily actions, right? So values, again, are that framework, that infrastructure that helps us know how we work together here. And there may be places where you can help them see how the values inspire them to take more ownership. So look for places to develop your team and help them build ownership. And then I've got a couple questions for you. Just some check-in questions to say, are you acting like an owner? Because remember, everything rises and falls on leadership. John Maxwell's taught us that well. And we need to lead ourselves well to lead others better. So are we acting like an owner? So here's a couple questions for you. Do you show up like the health of your culture depends on you? Every person on the team influences culture, right? We're all influencing culture. And so if none of us are showing ownership, then nobody's going to show ownership, right? Like if one of us is not showing ownership, then ownership's going to start eroding. So do you show up like the health of your culture depends on you? Are you behaving in a way that you would be proud of? Second, do you protect what matters most, even when no one's looking? So knowing what the best of your culture looks like, your mission, your vision, your values, are you protecting that even when no one else is looking? Like you believe in it so deeply, you're taking ownership for it. And then my third question for you is, are you leading like someone who wants to see this team succeed? Such a big question, right? Because we would all say, yes, of course we want our team to succeed, but are you leading like someone who wants to see the team succeed? Are you demonstrating that? Because again, it's contagious. All right, couple last thoughts for you on this one. In Culture Matters, I talk a lot about how culture is shaped every day, right? It's building or eroding every day. And leaders who act like owners are some of the greatest culture shapers. It's contagious. I've said that word a number of times, but it really is. Ownership is contagious, and it's a key ingredient in building a team that truly is unstoppable. When your team sees you lead with commitment and care, they're going to rise to that standard as well. So just be reminded that it really, truly does matter. And as we close out the Summer of Leadership series, I just want to kind of acknowledge that ownership is the final layer in the Summer of Leadership series, like the development work we've done. We've talked about 8 skills. This is kind of the one we culminate with. And I hope that you have felt both challenged and equipped, right? These are not all the skills we need as leaders, but these are 8 critical skills we need to lead well, and particularly to lead culture well. And so I hope that it's really given you some things to think about, because your leadership shapes your culture. What you model, your team will mirror. So there's so much value in being thoughtful and intentional about even these core leadership skills. So thank you for investing in your leadership and for caring enough to lead with clarity, courage, and care. We've packaged this entire series with all of the blog posts, the resources, the podcasts for you to share with other leaders on your team. So I want to encourage you. Maybe you've been listening to this with your team, which is fantastic. Maybe you've listened to it and you're like, okay, yep, actually, this would be a great leadership resource for us this fall. We have all of those blog posts, the resources, the podcast kind of packaged up. And I will link to those in the show notes, or you can email me, Jenni Catron at getforesight.com. We will send you all of that so it's all packaged up for you to be able to use it as a leadership resource with your team. Because friends, let's keep growing together, because culture matters. It matters so much, and I want your team to truly be unstoppable. Speaking of culture matters, before you take off, I've got a great next step in building a culture you're proud of, and it's getting to work on building your culture plan. We've talked about these skills all summer, but you still need a plan. You need an intentional plan, a system for reinforcing the best of your culture. So my book, Culture Matters, walks you through my proven lead culture framework that helps you assess, define, and build an unstoppable culture. And as we're moving into the fall, it's a great time to get the book for your entire team and read it together, dive in together, and get to work on your plan. You can email me at Jenni Catron at getforesight.com for bulk sales, bonus resources. Like, we will hook you up. Tell us what you need to get your team going, and we will equip you with the resources for that. And then finally, before we wrap up today, I want to give you the insider scoop on a new resource we're launching this fall. You guys, I'm so excited about this. We've been talking about this resource for over a year, and we've been working to get it right. But we are launching the Lead Culture Network, which is a community of culture champions committed to learning and growing together. This is a like-minded group of culture champions. I love that phrase so much, because that's what you are. Like, when you embrace the importance of culture, you are a culture champion in your organization. And the Lead Culture Network equips culture leaders with resources, the latest research, expert voices, and shared learning opportunities to help you confidently lead your culture. A lot of times you're the outlier, right? Like Jamie at the beginning of the episode that I talked about. She felt like she was the only one that saw the culture issues. Well, the Lead Culture Network is the place for you, because you're going to be surrounded by other culture champions who believe in the importance of this work, and they're going to help equip you. And so here's what it includes. It includes monthly training with myself. We're going to do live group sessions on new content and take deep dives on different topics. We're going to do monthly Q&A and hot seat sessions. So live and interactive Q&A sessions for you to ask your questions. And additionally, you can request to be in the hot seat and get live coaching for your culture dynamics. It's going to include community interaction, which is access to the community and the Lead Culture certified coaches that'll give you real-time questions and feedback. And so we're going to launch all of this with a founders group this fall. So we're not marketing it broadly. We're going to be talking about it just to our community and launching with a founders group this fall. So if that sounds like something you want to be a part of, which I suspect that it is, because if you are listening to these episodes, if you are dialed in to the importance of culture, You are a culture champion, and this is the network for you. And you can email me at Jenni Catron at getforesight.com and just ask to be added to the waitlist. Again, that's Jenni Catron, JenniCatron at getforesight, GET4SIGHT.com. Just email me, say, put me on the waitlist, and you will be one of the first to know about the network when it launches. All right, friends, thank you for valuing culture. Thank you for believing in the sacred work of leadership and the importance of building teams that are healthy and thriving. It's the great work that we get to do, and I am privileged to be your coach along the way. So have a great week, keep leading well, and I'll see you next week.